Welcome to the Ellevate podcast, conversations with women changing the face of business. And now your hosts, Kristy, Wallace, and Maricella, Herrera.
Hello and welcome to the Ellevate podcast. This is your host, Kristy Wallace, with my co-host, Maricella, Herrera. Maricella, are you feeling calm and relaxed today?
No.
Come on, you were just on vacation.
When am I ever feeling calm and relaxed? Sounds like you don't know me. Was I gone that long?
Did I forget? Well, no, because I want to call out that you went on vacation, and I'm calling it out because I think it's really important. And I've been having so many conversations with people lately who are just feeling overwhelmed. School's starting, it's getting colder outside if you are in a climate that gets colder. There's a lot happening in our world, racism and the fires in the Pacific Northwest, beyond. And so it's just been a time of stress. And typically we burn off steam going away. But it's also a time in an era of a pandemic that going away isn't economically an option for many, or realistically, where would you go? And so I just want to shine a light on the fact that you were able to get away, because I think it's really important. And I know it had been way too long since you'd been able to take a break.
Yeah, it really had. I hadn't been on vacation since maybe October of last year. So it had been a really long time, and I was happy to be able to take a few days off. Went with some friends to Maine, which I'm not gonna embarrass myself with the amount of lobster that I ate. But it was great.
That's ever embarrassing.
Okay, it was a little much. But it was great, it was delicious, and it was really good to disconnect. So I actually, for the first time in who knows how long, actually didn't look at email or Slack. I actually took the time to disconnect from work. It was hard, but I think it made a big difference. I had been feeling a little too stressed, a little too overwhelmed. We're going through big changes at Ellevate and had just come off of our Mobilize Women Week, full week summit. And, I love my job, but I also understand the need to step away. In fact, I was just having a conversation with one of our team members right before joining you on this, Kristy, and I was really pushing her to take some time off, because I do think it's important. You will not be able to perform at your best if you're not at your best. And the only way that you can get to that point is if you take care of yourself. Put your oxygen mask first.
Yeah. It's hard. I mean, I think about it a lot, and not to go too deep on this, but it's me and I do. But I think about it a lot because with the kids, it's oftentimes hard to take a break, even if you're not working, because it's still like taking care of someone and getting up early. And I mean, now that they're getting somewhat older, it's nice because we get to just do things with them and it's fun. But yeah, I mean, it's even, I'll say for my birthday, which is coming up, last night I kind of booked a day for myself to just do stuff and some self-care, and I'm excited about it, right? Because it's one day, but it's just a day when I'm going to try and disconnect for a little bit and not take care of anyone but me.
That's good. I think it's you deserve it.
Well, when we talk about self-care, I guess that is a great entry into our guest today, who just I'm always inspired by our guests, but Michelle is really interesting, and her story is powerful. Just starting out in retail, at a beauty counter, and growing, and a buyer. She was also a buyer, one of her first jobs, and she is now the CEO of Murad. And it's just a story to me of resilience, of confidence, in making some big decisions as we look at business shifts during this time. And she's phenomenal individual. And it was a really great conversation.
I can't wait to hear it. Their products are great also. Um, so
Not a paid advertisement, but
no, not being paid.
we're selling it for reals.
Not being paid. I just actually do think they're great. As I was telling you, I'm trying to get my skincare routine back in order since it's been neglected in the time of COVID. So trying different things out.
Sure, Murad will have the answer. So let's get to my conversation with Michelle Shigemasa, the CEO of Murad. Michelle, thank you so much for joining us today on the Ellevate podcast.
So happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
I would love it if you could share with our listeners just a little bit about who you are and how you got to where you are today.
Sure, of course. So I am an LA native, born and raised in LA. Important to note, I'm an only child and raised primarily by my mom, who worked full-time at Ralph's supermarket, if you're familiar, to support us. So I had a very humble upbringing. But what I really learned is that women can indeed do it all and also be independent. My first job was in a chain restaurant. I'm not sure if you have them over on the East Coast, called Numero Uno Pizzeria.
Oh, yes, we do.
The ironic part about my first career was I met my husband there. I was the hostess and he was the pizza delivery boy. So I was 17 and he did indeed take me to my high school prom. And so after my illustrious career as a hostess, I started retail as a temp hire in the juniors department at Nordstrom during the holiday season. They ended up keeping me on board. I moved my way up through management to become one of their youngest buyers at aged 22. So that's how I started and got into retail generally.
So Michelle, I love this story. Particularly, I love that you met your husband and at the restaurant, and it's just we don't always get to hear those fun personal details. So that's how you got into retail.
Yeah.
Great story. Obviously, a lot of drive and ambition is what I'm reading between the lines there. And then what happened next, and also just what was your vision for your career at that point? Once you became a buyer, what did you think was next, and how did you make those steps?
Yeah. So really, my goal and was really my dream job was to become a buyer. I think when you think about fashion and the perception of being a buyer, it seems highly creative and cool, right? But what I realized is it wasn't for me. So I got into the beauty industry really by accident. I had a midlife crisis, I always call it, at age 24, realizing that being a buyer wasn't my dream job. It didn't leverage my passion for teams. Certainly, creativity also I felt was not being expressed as much. It was very, very analytical. And although my brain has a strong analytical side, I was missing that balance. I'm very balanced, as a leader. So all said, I took a break. I wanted to stress less and really dream big about my next step. So I took what I thought was just an interim job that paid the bills as a counter manager for a cosmetics brand called Bobbi Brown Cosmetics at Nordstrom, while I kind of figured out life. What ended up happening is I loved it. I loved working in beauty. It had purpose, really making women more confident, making women feel beautiful, made a really big impact on not only my clients, but also on me. I also love the creativity piece of it and leveraged my artistic skill set. So, what really became a point where I thought I was going to pivot and needing to take a little bit of a mental break ended up being my new career. So I fell into beauty by accident. Really, from there, I worked with Bobby Brown, and again, similar to my story at Nordstrom, I worked my way up and did almost every role in the beauty industry, from being a field trainer um, to an account executive. And after 7 years with Bobby Brown, I moved to another color brown brand called Smashbox Cosmetics, which at the time was a relatively unknown brand. I ended up spending 13 years there in various senior roles and leading up to general manager. And to give you some perspective, with the brand and I guess my career involvement as well. When I started with the brand, my first year revenue goal, I'll never forget this, was $10 million. That's how small it was. And when I departed the brand in late 2017, it was north of 300 million. So I really understood what it, felt like to work in what most would consider a startup, working directly for the founders. And about midway into my tenure at Smashbox, we got purchased by Estee Lauder. And so our environment, our culture, our way of working became, very corporate and very layered. So my experience with Estee Lauder and with Smashbox was really important to my career, because I learned everything, from working like a startup, thinking like a startup, moving fast, all the way up to learning how to navigate, more layers, more complexity, within my role. And so it was a great foundation for my next step, which was Murad.
There's so many things that you said that are really sticking with me. One is you thought your dream job was to be a buyer, and then you realized that wasn't it, and you took the time to explore different things and take the next step. And I think that oftentimes happens where we have a vision, and then we kind of realize that maybe it's not the right fit, or over time it's not the right fit. So I just wanted to call that out, because I really appreciate that sentiment and have been in that place myself. And it's okay to acknowledge that we're in a company during such a time of transition, working with senior leadership, and then going through an acquisition. And there's this aspect of curiosity, of being able to learn as you go, challenging yourself to explore different parts of the business. And I do think that that's an important part of being a CEO, right? You always say, I'm not an expert, I know a little bit about a lot of things, and understanding how businesses operate and function and the different parts of it. Do you think that experience you had throughout your career really positioned you for where you are today? And how did you go about continuing to push yourself for professional development or curiosity?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think absolutely I learned to navigate, new roles, new responsibilities. But one thing that has always kept me centered in any position that I've held is being present in the lens of the consumer. And so really putting myself, in the role of the consumer, and, relating to whatever it is and whatever responsibility I had at the time, whether it was training or, being an account executive with accounts, et cetera, et cetera. So what I have done, I think, throughout my career is I've learned as I've experienced. And over time, I just kept taking on more and more responsibility, but with the same lens of being consumer centric, the same lens of, understanding that teams are important and getting teams, excited for the vision and working towards the. So what I'm saying is all the principles I would say that I started to learn early on in my career have carried out consistently throughout my career. with just expanded responsibility. And so within Smashbox at Estee Lauder, becoming a general manager really encompasses almost all aspects of running a North America business, right? So from marketing to operations to sales, obviously, to the field service through education, et cetera, et cetera. When I moved to Murad, one of the reasons I was interested in moving to Murad was, again, evolving my learning. So those same principles and skill sets that I had developed in North America were simply expanded to global responsibility. My learning at Murad has been really the international segment of the business, specifically Asia, China, et cetera. A little bit more behind the scenes in supply chain, and other things that perhaps Lauder would have had more shared services, so I wouldn't have been directly responsible for. So I think we're always evolving. I think we're always growing and learning, but I think we're always centered on our key principles of leadership.
You talked a few times about the customer, and
Yes.
certainly in your roles in sales and more customer facing, you really got to understand those customers and how you differentiate yourselves. What are they looking for? How can you connect with them on your value proposition and what makes your brand and your products unique? So how has that come into play with Murad, where you're really carving out a bigger space on the shelves, if you will, and connecting with customers and giving them what they're looking for?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, when we ask, where do we use that consumer lens? And the answer is everywhere. Within each segment of the business, whether it's developing product, we're looking to fill a need gap, a pain point, within a consumer's life. When we market, we want to make sure it's clear and understandable, and we're not just talking marketing speak and talking to ourselves, what's relevant to her or him, in education, et cetera. So everything that we do at Murad is, I would say consumer-centric. I think, if we want to get into Murad and basically, what's unique about a Murad is it's an amazing brand with a very rich history of innovation and efficacy. So the product is outstanding and it performs, and that's very consumer centric, right? Murad was also founded by a doctor, Dr. Murad, who was a trained pharmacist and dermatologist who had a really interesting and unique take on skin health within his practice. And so talk about an inspiration. Dr. Murad, at the age of 50, kind of moved on from his very successful career as a dermatologist and started Murad Skincare in 1989. So really, he did that because of his purpose. He believed in what we would call today inclusive health, which means in addition to treating skin topically, he needed to treat the patient also from the inside out. So again, we're still revolving right around the consumer. And it wasn't just, he realized that treating skin topically wasn't enough, that there are many other factors for people feeling beautiful and having healthy skin. And his philosophy of what we would call self-care, it was really an inside-out approach to skincare. And his self-care philosophy revolves around, 4 pillars of wellness. So he really was conscious about, again, caring for the consumer and putting himself in their place, and not only as a dermatologist treating skin, but treating the whole person. And I think that's a real testament to what makes Murad unique and special, is our brand positioning and our purpose. We've got reputable, clinical, proven formulas that deliver the strong results, but also backed by science-based wellness. So it's not just about people having nice skin. It's about people stressing less and living happier lives as well. So the brand flows through not only the clinical problem solution, but also overall wellness. And we know today the wellness industry is growing rapidly and arguably one of the biggest global trends, if we can even call it a trend. It's a new way of living, but it's really indicating a growing connection between beauty and wellness, right? So that line has been drawn and connected, so to speak. And Murad is positioned right in the middle of that, which is, I think, a very strong differentiator for the brand and carving our way with retailers and consumers.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if our listeners know, but the skin is the largest organ in your body, right?
Yes.
And so it makes so much sense to treat it as you're an organ and take care of it, and and keep it healthy, and also just the aspects of all the things that then the environment influences our skin: sleep, diet, water, exercise, mental health and stress. I mean, there's so many factors, and so kind of looking holistically at how we take care of ourselves and that mindset. You mentioned purpose, and I'm inspired by that purpose, really thinking about your customer holistically and how you help them live their best life.
Yeah, I agree with you fully, Kristy. And I think the only thing I would add is not only is skin the biggest organ, we also believe it's a really strong reflection of your overall health, as well. So you can see unhealthy behavior on your skin. And that's really why doctor, came up with, what we call our four pillars of science-backed wellness. It's exactly what you said. It's eat your water, meaning fruits and vegetables actually hydrate your body and your skin better than water because it's full of nutrients and it doesn't just kind of go through you. Awaken your body is our second pillar. It's about exercise. Muscles retain water better than fat. We all know that. That's proven. Be kind to your mind. We all know what stress does to our skin, right? We also know what it does to us internally. We can't sleep and there are many effects, but ultimately it shows up on your skin. Stress is responsible for more issues on the skin than the sun is. And we all know how bad sun is for your skin. And to finally nourish your skin is this fourth pillar, which is really about highly, efficacious skincare, which, that's obviously our role in total body wellness.
Michelle, let's talk a little bit about how you're leading the way and leaving your mark on Murad, specifically around direct-to-consumer, digital sales, online. There's been so much in the news the past, couple of months with COVID, but before that, around the evolving nature of direct-to-consumer and how businesses are really looking to innovate in how they're connecting with their customers on a purchase point. So what have you been doing, and what's your vision? What's getting you out of bed every day, getting you excited around that?
Yeah, thank you for asking. Thankfully, we started to ramp up what I would call the digital world and make pretty strong investments about 3 years ago when I joined Murad. I think what the pandemic really did is just accelerate our strategy, if that makes sense. So, what I would share is that, we'll reach our 2025 ambitions, in terms of contribution and growth. We'll actually reach that by the end of this year. So the pandemic really only accelerated a strategy that was already in place. What we believed and we continue to believe is that driving DTC is fundamental. Even then, but even more relevant today. Again, it's about being where the consumer is. Shopping and online is clearly where the consumer is. So online sales have been growing exponentially over the years, but really have reached peak levels during COVID, really to the tune of about 3 times normal levels. What's important about our focus on digital and online is it's about driving brand awareness, brand equity, elevating our engagement with our consumer. And we're doing that through social, through digital, with the goal of ultimately increasing brand love. That's what we want. We want deeper connection, and we want people to love our brand. And I believe strongly that digital and touching the consumer directly, as well as social efforts where we're inspiring engagement from our consumers, have always been the right thing to do, but even more importantly, as we look into the future.
I couldn't agree more. I wanted to end our conversation just learning a little bit more about you. We have a lightning round where I'm going to ask you some questions.
Oh.
And you answer in 1 sentence or less. This is always so fun.
I'm scared.
Don't be scared. All right, Michelle, are you an introvert or an extrovert?
Oh, I promise I won't answer all my questions like this. I'm an introvert, believe it or not, by nature, but an extrovert by need. I've had to learn, and I've had to force myself. By nature, I'm happy being alone at home. Maybe it goes back to my only child upbringing.
Yeah. What's your favorite day of the week?
For sure, Friday.
All right. Well, happy Friday.
Yeah, happy Friday to you. Even Thursday is my second favorite. I call it Friday Eve.
Yes. Oh, yeah. What are you, an early bird or a night owl?
Definitely a night owl. I can easily stay up. I get a second wind at like midnight for some reason and start cleaning cabinets. I like to sleep in.
Who would be your dream dinner guest?
Oh, this one's a hard one. I would say the Obamas. I'll pick 2. Michelle.
Do you have any pet peeves?
For sure. I hate disorganization with people, with things. Disorganization is my pet peeve for sure.
I can definitely relate to that.
It makes me nervous. I like things to have a place.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of moving right now, and so I'm pretty much just walking through my house with my eyes closed. I can't take it.
Good. It's good because you'll be really organized and have a clean start when you get to your new place.
Yes, that is the perfect way to look at it. What is your Monday morning must-have? A specific food or activity?
Coffee. Probably 2 cups on Monday morning.
Do you have a favorite recent read?
I do. Working with the teams and the leadership team, we just read a book called 5 Dysfunctions of a Team.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually super positive, but it's really about understanding that being nice. It's about elevating trust and elevating debate and trusting teams more and going deeper with teams. And I loved it. And we've really been practicing some of the philosophies within our leadership team. It's awesome.
What is your top self-care practice?
I'll see. I need a little work here. I'm trying to be a good self-care person because of Murad and Dr. Murad in my role. I'm learning how to meditate, so I'm gonna say that. And I do like my manis and petties, which have been suffering for 5 months now.
I do too, actually. It's like one of my indulgences, and I tried to paint my own nails yesterday, and it's such a disaster. I don't even know why I tried.
Yeah. So this is a good example of what I was saying. Our experience of doing our own manis and petties not good, right? So we'll revert back to our old habits as soon as the salons open back up.
Mm-hmm.
Agree with you. It was not cute. I had to do it twice, and it just not cute. And it wasn't relaxing, and it wasn't it wasn't enjoyable. It wasn't that self-care. I think that's a big reason that I like to get a little pampering.
Yeah, I agree. And finally, to close us out, do you have one final thought that you'd like to leave with our listeners?
Yes, I think I'm going to quote someone that I'm very inspired by, which is Dr. Murad. And my favorite saying, and it's what's on the back of my business card actually, is be imperfect and live longer. There you go.
That is a perfect ending to this conversation. Michelle, thank you so much for joining us today on the Ellevate podcast. It was a true honor to talk to you, to learn from you, and to be inspired by you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, and wishing you all the best. Stay well.
Thanks. Absolutely. You too.
Thanks so much for listening to Ellevate. If you like what you hear, help a girl out. Subscribe to the Ellevate podcast on iTunes. Give us 5 stars and share your review. Also, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at EllevateNTWK, that's Ellevate Network, and become a member. You can learn all about membership and all the great things that Ellevate Network is doing at our website, www.ellevatenetwork.com. That's ELLEVATE network.com. And special thanks to our producer, Catherine Heller. She rocks. And to our voiceover artist, Rachel Griesinger. Thanks so much, and join us next week.